I promised myself I would take a break this week, and not make any videos while I regenerated before tackling the Thunderbolt video. But, it turns out reading books makes me want to make more videos. It's a terrible curse. However, I read Fortunes of War number 5 finally, known as Heavy as the Head, by Philip Lee, and I think you should too. Before we get started, Phil Lee is a Battletech author and editor. He actually wrote one of the books that got me back into the latter eras of Battletech fiction, which is Hunting Season, and he is the primary editor behind Shrapnel magazine. Every author can have highs and lows in terms of their work, but this book, spoiler, is definitely one of the highs. Taking place within some of the recent times of the Federated Suns, I think this book has an enormous amount to offer, not only in following the main character's journey, but in building up what is happening inside of the Federated Suns, and what it looks like in the 3150s. So, let us go over Heavy is the Head, and what I enjoyed about it. It's that time, once again, for everybody to get aboard the disclaimer train. I got my digital copy of Heavy is the Head as a part of my Mercenaries Kickstarter, which didn't load into my Kindle app appropriately, so I then bought it for a handful of dollars. So I got it twice. In other words, I was not provided a copy of this book by CGL, and this review is not an advertisement, nor was I paid by anyone affiliated with Battletech to do this. While there is a host of characters within the book, this is really about a single prominent character. Part of the reason for this is that it is a novella, not a full novel. This actually works in the book's favor, and I give big credit to Phil for making the most of a novella. By focusing in on one main character for the most part, as a direct perspective character, he fully fleshes out not only his personality, but his journey. The primary protagonist of the story, the leader of the Crown Crusaders, and a man with an incredible sense of duty, Michael Crown is a superbly fun character to follow, who not only fits into the universe itself in a great way, but really embodies much of what someone would expect from the Federated Suns as far as characters are concerned. He's courageous, even if somewhat stubborn and not particularly bright, while also being dutiful and proud of his nation. We even find out that he's a reasonable family man. Michael's in for some rough times throughout the book, but comes through on the other side, though not unscathed. We meet him at a high, before seeing him crash down, before rising to a level of adding dignity not only to his mercenary unit, but to his new home. He is a genuinely great character. Heavy is the Head is the story of the Crown Crusaders, which Phil notes in the opening of the book are actually based on a Kickstarter backer's characters, which is really cool. The main character and leader is of course Major Michael Crown, who with his Crusaders is involved in the liberation of New Syrtis in 3147. From here, we see the illustrious family history of the Crowns, at least through the perspective of Michael, as his inner thoughts really go into the pride he takes in being part of the campaign, and even the excitement he feels in seeing the first prince himself on the battlefield. Though, a tragedy strikes that puts him and his unit into a poor position in the aftermath of the fighting. In fact, it even causes him a personal humiliation. You see, Michael seems to struggle with the fact that he and his mercenaries are not an AFFS unit, which is endearing and hilarious at the same time, and really shows a great insight into his character. Yes, he is a mercenary, but he believes that he and his unit are loyal to the Federated Suns in ways any other citizen would be. It's a fun thing to see that challenged in real time for him, while also going to show that he has a good heart in all of it. Yes, some of it I am sure is ego, or flexing in some ways, but he really does put his money where his mouth is, despite how wrong-headed he is in some respects. After this big, flashy opening, the real story begins. And this is where I won't spoil anything, beyond saying that Heavy as the Head does a great deal of world building, and shows a much more lived-in world despite its story length. We get to see what less attention-given Davion worlds look like. We get to see the nobility in action, or inaction as it were, and we get to see how on-the-ground intrigue can result in catastrophe, if not for one man and his loyal cadre. It also goes to show how Davion is trying to anchor and pay their mercenaries, given the extreme difficulty the state is under. And the ending, I think, is heartwarming, and magnifies the story and characters within. I think the Crown Crusaders are awesome, and I think Michael Crown has an amazing foundation for new stories to be built around him, his unit, and the Federated Sons. While reading this, I managed to talk to Phil a bit about it, and while this isn't a Q&A, he made some comparisons to the Crusaders being somewhat like the Calhounds, in that they are a mercenary unit loyal to one house, but not just for the money, but out of citizenship and duty. They feel different from the Hounds too, which is good, but it is great to see their kind of implementation for them, and I'd love to see more in the vein of this story. I'm not going to do a spoiler section of the review this time. It is a novella after all, and the most important parts of the review I think I got to say already. But if you've got the time, check out this book. If you backed the Mercenaries Kickstarter, you might already have access to it through your backer kit. If not, I will have a link in the top pinned comment for the book. What a fun read. The first on my bucket list on my days off, which are no longer days off, I guess. Oh, how ironic that this prevented me from having said days off. Still, I think it was well worth it. Thank you all for joining me here today. If you enjoyed this content, you know the drill. Hit like and subscribe, it really does help. If I recall correctly, about 30% of you guys aren't subscribed. When you hit subscribe though, you give me that warm, fuzzy feeling inside, and I really appreciate it. Also, I want to give a massive shout out to all of the channel members who make this possible. If it were not for you, the YouTube channel members, I wouldn't be able to do this content the way I do. So thank you, I sincerely mean it. And with all of that, what do you think of the Crown Crusaders? Have you read Fortunes of War issue 5 yet? In other words, have you read Heavy as the Head? I'd like to know what you think. But really, again, I recommend checking it out. Do you intend to pick this up? If you haven't already, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll catch you all there.